Arrival of the Honorable Senate President and the Senators of the Republic of the Philippines.
The 62nd session of the Senate, the first regular session of the 19th Congress is hereby called to order. The chamber will be led in prayer by distinguished colleague Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu birabbin nas, malikin nas, ilahin nas, min syarril waswasil kanas, alladhi yuwaswisu fi sudurin nas, minnal jinnati wan nas. Sa ngalan ng nag-iisang Diyos, ang mapagpala at ang mahabagin. Kami po ay nagpapakupkop sa Panginoon, ang mapagpala at ang mahabagin, ang hari ng mga nilikha at ng mga daigdig, ang nag-iisang Diyos ng sangkatauhan, laban sa bumubulong ng kasamaan at lumalayo pagkatapos bumulong. Silang bumubulong ng kasamaan sa puso at isipan ng sangkatauhan. Sila ay mula sa mga jin at tao na naghihikayat sa kasamaan. O aming nag-iisang Diyos, napakabigat po ng inatang po ninyo sa aming mga balikat. Bagamat hiningi po namin ng biyayang ito na makapaglingkod sa bayan, hindi po namin kakayanin ito kung walang hudyat na kapangyarihan galing po sa inyong kabanalan. Huwag niyo po pahintulutan na kami maligaw sa paniniwala na kami po ang siyang makapangyarihan. Tanging sa iyo lamang po ang kapangyarihan upang kaming mga nahirang ay makatupad sa aming sinumpaang tungkuling, maging makadiyos, makabayan, makakalikasan, at makakapwa-tao. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll of members.
Roll call of members, the Honorable Senator Angara, Senator Binay, Senator Cayetano Alan, Senator Cayetano Pia, Senator De La Rosa, Senator Ejercito, Senator Escudero, Senator Estrada, Senator Gatchalian, Senator Go, Senator Ontiveros, Senator Lapid, Senator Ligarda, Senator Marcos, Senator Padilla, Senator Pimentel, Senator Poe, Senator Revilla, Senator Tolentino, Senator Tulfo, Senator Villanueva, Senator Villar Cynthia, Senator Villar Mark, the Senate President.
With 21 senators present, the chair declares the presence of the quorum. We would like to apologize to our colleagues for the lateness of our session. We had to just end a Commission on Appointments hearing, which ended late also on committee level. Our apologies. Please proceed, Majority.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this juncture, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 61st Session, Tuesday, March 14, 2023, and consider the same as approved.
There being no objection to the motion of the Majority Floor Leader, motion is approved.
Mr. President, before we proceed with the reference of business, may I be allowed to acknowledge and welcome some guests from the gallery. We have Congresswoman Ann Matibag of the 1st District of Laguna and Attorney Melvin Matibag, guest of Senator Ligarda. With us is the officials and staff from DTI led by Yusek Ruth Castelo and ASEC Mary Jean Pacheco, guest of Senator Mark Villar. Lobo Batangas Mayor Lota Manalo and Vice Mayor Julie Manalo. Guest of Senator Mark Villar from Temasek Company, Chua Eugene, Adrian Chung, and Alan Cabrera. Guest of Senator Win Gatchalian, Alabat, Quezon Mayor Jose Ramil Arquiza, and the delegation from the municipality of Cabayan Benguet, led by Vice Mayor Mike Badival, guest of this representation. We also have with us, Mr. President, guests of Senator Lapid and our Senate President, officials of the DOH led by Undersecretary Nestor Santiago Jr. and ASEC Gloria Balboa, officials of the MMDA led by Chairperson Romando Artes, ASEC Bernardo Alejandro of the Civil Defense Office of Civil Defense, the Philippine contingent composed of 82 personnel who selflessly dedicated their service to aid the people of Turkey and Syria in their rescue and recovery operations. They are all here today, Mr. President, together with the guests of Senator Tolentino, Mayor Rizalde Bernal of Dasol, Pangasinan, Mayor Colin Reyes of Mabini, Pangasinan, and Brigadier General Glenn June Kalambuhay, Assistant Deputy Chief of Staff of the AFP, guest of Senator Lito Lapid.
Yes, may the chair ask for a minute suspension so we may approach our guests really quickly. At the same time, I have to sign 81 resolutions.
Yes, Mr. President. I move for a minute suspension.
Minute suspension.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move to consider proposed Senate Resolution number 535 and for the Secretary to read the title of the measure. This is the resolution commending the Philippine government contingent in the rescue and recovery operations in Turkey and Syria.
Yes, there being no objection to the motion, motion is approved. We ask Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Resolution commending the Philippine government contingent for their valor and acts of service in the rescue and recovery operations conducted following the magnitude 7.8 earthquake in Turkey and Syria.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize our Deputy Majority Leader, Senator J.V. Ejercito, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, it is my honor and privilege to sponsor proposed Senate Resolution number 535, commending the Philippine government contingent for their valor and acts of service in the rescue and recovery operations conducted following the 7.8 magnitude earthquake that devastated Turkey and Syria. Mr. President, the Philippine government sent an interagency humanitarian contingent of 82 personnel to Turkey to assist in the rescue and recovery operations following the catastrophic earthquake. The contingent was composed of 12 personnel from the 505th Search and Rescue Group of the Philippine Air Force, 21 from the 525th Engineering Combat Battalion of the Philippine Army, 9 from the Metro Manila Development Authority, 8 from the Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority, 30 from the Department of Health, and 2 from the Office of Civil Defense. In the 2 weeks that they were deployed in Turkey, our brave and heroic men and women completed search and rescue operations in 36 buildings, retrieved 6 bodies, and served more than 1,000 patients. They also distributed blankets, bonnets, gloves, and hygiene and sanitary kits to the earthquake victims. Ang ating pong bansa ay madalas dalawin ng mga sakuna, hagupit ng mga bagyo at mga pagyanig dulot ng lindol. Sa mga panahong pong tayo ang nasalanta, hindi po tayo pinabayaan ng ibang mga bansa. It was our turn to give back to those who have extended their kindness during our moments of need. Mr. President, hindi po matatawaran ang pinamala sa tapang, dedikasyon at malasakit ng ating makababayan na nagpunta sa Turkey upang tumulong sa mga biktima ng lindol. They are the epitome of selflessness and dedication of service. Filipinos are known to help each other in times of need. No burden is to be carried by one person alone. We spread the weight in each other's shoulders and push forward together. The true spirit of bayanihan lives on, and our kababayans have shared it to the people of Turkey and Syria. Sa 82 na membro ng Philippine Interagency Humanitarian Contingent to Turkey, taos-puso po ang aming pasasalamat at paghanga sa inyo. Mabuhay po kayo, mabuhay ang lahing Pilipino. Maraming salamat po, Ginoong Pangulo.
Mr. President, next co-sponsor, before we hear the next co-sponsorship speech, Mr. President, Senators Bongo, Revilla, and Tolentino would like to just insert for the records their sponsorship speech. I now move that we recognize Senator Bato de la Rosa to co-sponsor the measure.
Our distinguished colleague from the province of Davao del Sur and Bohol and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Majority Leader. Mr. President, as someone who has seen his fair share of destruction and devastation with causes both natural and man-made, I rise today with a bittersweet sense of pride, co-sponsoring proposed Senate Resolution number 535, commending the Philippine government contingent for their valor and acts of service in the rescue and recovery operations conducted following the magnitude 7.8 earthquake in Turkey and Syria. It was a calamity of epic proportions, with seismologists stating that it would likely be one of the deadliest in this decade. With a death toll of over 50,000 people, this earthquake and its wave of damage destroyed buildings, homes, families, and lives. But it also spurred our bayanihan spirit into action. Our quick and snappy response was in the form of an 82 personnel contingent coming from the varied sectors. They were composed of the members of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Department of Health, the Office of Civil Defense, the Metro Manila Development Authority, and the Subic Bay Development Authority. Together, they brought goods such as clothing and hygiene kits and even offered assistance in the rescue and recovery operations in Turkey. Mr. President, there is an idiomatic expression to put something on the map. Generally speaking, it means to make famous, to make popular. Many times in the past, the Philippines has been put on the map through our many talents, as well as our hardworking nature, especially that of our OFWs. However, Mr. President, these 82 people have put on the map the meaning of the Filipino spirit in the time of dire need and desperation. We are not only resilient survivors, we rise to the occasion and give ourselves unselfishly. Dahil sa ating pagbabayanihan, nakikilala rin ang Pilipino bilang bayani. Thank you, Mr. President.
Maraming salamat, distinguished colleague from Davao.
Mr. President, the principal author of the resolution, Senator Lito Lapid, would just like to insert for the record his co-sponsorship speech, Mr. President.
Thank
Let's
you very
put that
much
in
for
the
that.
record.
We take note of that manifestation.
Yes, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that
Before
all...
we take it up, may I just also give a short manifestation,
Please,
Majority Leader,
please,
with the
Mr.
permission of the body. I stand here to proudly commend the Philippine government's 82-person contingent that was sent to aid in the rescue and recovery efforts for the victims of the massive earthquake in Turkey and Syria. We thank and salute each one of you, every single member of the contingent, from our armed forces of the Philippines, Department of Health, Office of Civil Defense, the Metro Manila Development Authority, the Subic Bay Metropolitan Authority. By extending your skill, expertise, courage, and selflessness to the victims of Turkey and Syria, you have carried the country with you and let our Turkish and Syrian brethren know that they are not alone in this time of crisis and in this time of need. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat. Saludo po ako sa inyo. Majority Leader?
Yes, Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved.
Mr. President, no other member wishes to interpolate or propose any amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt proposed Senate Resolution number 535, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objection, PS Resolution number 535 is hereby adopted, subject to style. Congratulations. And may we suspend session to allow these gentlemen and ladies to come to the podium. I know it was initially only 8 heads of their delegation, but you know, they deserve to be here with all of us. If we make them fit, we'll make them fit. We'll ask the people in front to scrum muna for 5 minutes, for 2 minutes, so that we can have everyone join us here.
Minute suspension,
So,
Mr. President.
1 minute suspension.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move to consider House Concurrent Resolution number 9, taking into consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution number 8, and for the Secretary to read the title of the measure. This is the resolution granting consent to Mr. Delfin Lorenzana and Mr. Gamaliel Asis Cordova. So move, Mr. President.
There being no objection to the motion, motion is approved, and therefore we ask the Secretary to read the title of the measure.
Concurrent resolution granting consent to Mr. Delfin N. Lorenzana, Basis Conversion Development Authority Chairman and former Secretary of the Department of National Defense, and Mr. Gamaliel Asis Cordoba, Chairman of the Commission on Audit and former Commissioner of the National Telecommunications Commission, to receive the awards to be conferred on them by the Government of Japan for their contributions to Philippine-Japan relations.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, may I just deliver a very short a sponsorship speech with regard to this concurrent resolution, Mr. President?
Yes, please proceed, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, the Order of the Rising Sun was established in 1875 as Japan's first award to bestow decorations upon individuals in recognition of their service to the nation or public. It is also conferred on foreigners who have made important contributions to enhance bilateral relations. And so Chairman Lorenzana and Chairman Cordoba join other distinguished recipients of similar honors from the government of Japan. And we'd like to extend our advance congratulations to both of them for this honor being bestowed upon them. And lastly, Mr. President, let me urge our distinguished colleagues to adopt this concurrent resolution granting consent to Mr. Lorenzana and Mr. Cordoba to receive the awards to be conferred upon them by the government of Japan pursuant to Article 9, Section 8 of our Constitution. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo, and may God bless us all.
Yes, thank you very much, Majority Leader, for that manifestation.
Mr. President, at this juncture, may I move that all members of the Senate be made co-authors of this resolution?
There being no objection to the motion. It's a
House
House,
resolution,
so
Mr.
it's
President.
a co-sponsorship.
Concurrent resolution. Yes, Mr.
So
President.
co-sponsorship.
Yes, Mr.
Yes,
President.
there being
Thank you,
objection.
Mr. President. Mr. President, no other member wishes to interpolate or propose any amendments to the measure. I move that we adopt House Concurrent Resolution number 9, taking into consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution number 8, subject to style. I so move, Mr.
And
President.
before we do that, we'll just put on the record that I believe the speeches of Senator Go, Senator Bato de la Rosa, and myself will just be inserted to the records.
Yes, Mr. President, we take note of that and
There
thank
being no
you.
objection to the Majority Leader's motion, motion is approved. Senate Concurrent Resolution, House Concurrent Resolution number 9, taking into consideration Senate Concurrent Resolution number 8, is hereby adopted.
Move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended for 1.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Just give me 1 second, sir. We're looking for my reference of business. Please. Okay, please proceed without any objection. Please proceed, Secretary.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2003, providing for the development of sustainable cities and communities in the country and for other purposes. Senator Legarda.
Referred to the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing, Sustainable Development Goals, Ways and Means and Finance.
2004, declaring Pasig Islet of Barangay Bato in Santa Cruz, Davao del Sur as an ecotourism site and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Marcos.
To the Committees on Tourism, Environment, Natural Resources, and Finance.
2005, for providing for the establishment of a district hospital in the municipality of Ramon Magsaysay, Zamboanga del Sur, to be known as Ramon Magsaysay District Hospital, appropriating funds therefore. Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Rules.
2006, providing protection and incentives to freelance workers. Senator Ejercito.
To the Committees on Labor and Employment, Ways and Means.
2007, regulating and modernizing the practice of medical technology in the Philippines, providing funds therefore and for other related purposes. Senator Ejercito.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Health and Demography, and Finance.
2008, granting full insurance coverage to all qualified Agrarian Reform beneficiaries of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, amending for the purpose RA 6657 as amended. Senator Ejercito.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
Resolution, Senate Concurrent Resolution Number 8, Concurrent Resolution granting consent to Mr. Delfin N. Lorenzana and Mr. Gamaliel Asis Cordoba to receive the awards to be conferred on them by the Government of Japan for their contributions to Philippine-Japan relations. Senator Zubiri.
Committee on Rules.
544, directing the Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to review the process of Social Security system in processing benefit claims with the end in view to improve the efficiency of claiming their benefits, especially retirement claims. Senator Tulfo.
To the Committee on Government, Corporations, Public Enterprise.
545, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry to review the existing laws, rules, and regulations on the suspension or revocation of PhilHealth accreditation of private and public hospitals. Senator Marcos.
To the Committee on Health and Demography.
546, raising the alarm on the impending suspension of certain routes on the Philippine National Railways due to the construction of the North-South Commuter Railway with the end in view of ensuring accessible alternative modes of transportation for all affected passengers. Senator Legarda.
To the Committee on Public Services.
547, congratulating and commending Larry Apolinario for his exceptional performance in becoming the champion of the First Philippine Trail Running Association National Championship. Senator Legarda.
Committee on Rules.
548, congratulating and commending the awardees of 20th 10 Accomplished Youth Organizations, TAYO. Awards for their invaluable contributions to nation building. Senator Angara.
To the Committee on Rules.
Additional reference of business messages from the House. Letter from the House informing the Senate that on 14 March 2023, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 7352, implementing resolution of both houses number 6 of the Congress of the Philippines, calling for a constitutional convention to propose amendments to or revision of the 1987 Constitution, appropriating funds therefore.
Refer to Committees on Constitutional Amendments, Revision of Codes, Electoral Reforms, People's Participation, Finance.
7240, right-sizing the national government to improve public service delivery, appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Organization, and Finance.
7006, providing for the automatic income classification of provinces, cities, and municipalities, amending for the purpose Section 8 of RA 7160 as amended.
To the Committees on Local Government and Finance.
7210, declaring February 7 of every year as National Religious Freedom Appreciation Day in celebration of the World Interfaith Harmony Week of the United Nations.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
Letter from the House and transmitting to the Senate a copy of Resolution Number 52 entitled Resolution expressing the full support of the House of Representatives for the immediate ratification of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, which was adopted by the House on February 21, 2023.
To the Archives. Joint Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we transfer from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Committee Report Number 43 on Senate Bill Number 2001. This is the Bill on New Philippine Passport Act. I so move, Mr. President.
There being no objections to the motion, motion approved.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill Number 2001 under Committee Report Number 43.
There being no objection, motion is approved. The Secretary can read the title of the measure.
An act providing for a new passport law repealing for the purpose RA 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996.
Mr. President, to sponsor the measure, may we recognize Senator Amy Marcos, Chairperson of the Committee on Foreign Relations, to deliver the sponsorship speech.
Our distinguished colleague from the great province of Ilocos Norte, Senator Amy Marcos, is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader, Mr. President, and my dear colleagues in the Senate. Today, I submit to this chamber Committee Report Number 43, sponsoring herewith Senate Bill 2001, entitled An Act Providing for a New Passport Law, repealing for the purpose RA 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996. The right to travel is a constitutionally protected right under Article 3, Section 6, which shall not be impaired, in the words of the Constitution, except in the interest of national security, public safety, or public health, as may be provided by law. Part of the liberty of which a civilian cannot be deprived, therefore, without due process of law, is this freedom of movement and travel, never to be limited unless there are clear, compelling grounds as mandated by the Constitution and prescribed by law. This constitutes part of the fundamental guarantees in our Constitution of equality of opportunity and the part of freedom of personal mobility. In truth, the matter of passports is one of deep and abiding personal importance to me, having been deprived of a Filipino passport for over 7 years. May such a fate not befall any other Filipino. Today, we have witnessed developments in machine-readable travel documents such as passports. When the Philippine Passport Act of 1996 was passed, the Philippines was still issuing hand-scripted passports upon which photos were manually affixed. In 2007, we upgraded for the first time to the machine-readable version. Then in 2009, the Philippines adopted the electronic biometric passports or e-passports, machine-readable travel documents that have chips, electronic microchips embedded in them. With advancements in technology, there is a need to bring forth a new generation of passports. The new Philippine passport law will be the framework upon which we will build the future reiteration of the Philippine passports and contactless technologies. This will provide for a more simplified passport application process, improvements in the general public's access, at the same time maintaining the security and integrity of our Filipino passport. Further, these provisions harmonize with the recent laws already passed, particularly RA 10173, otherwise known as the Data Privacy Act, the RA 11055, the Philippine ID System or PhilSys Act, RA 11767 or the Foundling Recognition and Protection Act, and RA 11641 or the Department of Migrant Workers Act. Herewith, the concept of consular offices will be expanded to institutionalize the temporary off-site passport services or TOPS, recently offered by the DFA all over the country. Senior citizens and migrant workers abroad will be allowed to renew their passports without needing to physically appear before the consular offices. The new law also empowers the DFA to modify the present requirement of personal appearance for first-time passport applicants whenever technologies become available. Currently, a Filipino traveling overseas who lost his passport will have to apply for a travel document or certificate at the nearest Philippine embassy or consulate general to expedite his return to the Philippines. In this instance, Filipino travelers go through a lot of inconvenience and incur greater costs. The new Philippine Passport Act now provides for the issuance of emergency passports by our Foreign Service Post to these traveling Filipinos to ensure that they can continue their intended overseas travel prior to their return to the Philippines or their resident overseas. The issuance of diplomatic passports also will be extended to former Senate presidents, speakers of the House, associate justices of the Supreme Court, presiding justices of the Court of Appeals in the Sandigan Bayan, members of Congress, Secretary of the Senate, and the Secretary General of the House, as well as secretaries of all departments of the executive branch. A conventional travel document, meanwhile, may be issued to stateless persons who are likewise permanent residents of the Philippines and refugees who have been granted such status or asylum in the Philippines. The new law will also introduce a creation of passport databases and safeguards which will contain all current, if available, previous passport and travel document records of Filipino citizens, including recognized alien residents. There shall also be established a watch list database containing information on persons whose passport applications have been denied or whose passports have been canceled altogether, as well as those who have committed or attempted to commit offenses under the Passport Act. Safeguards to these databases will be implemented in coordination with the Department of Information and Communications Technology, or the DICT. The law will also create a passport revolving fund sourced from more than 20% of the gross annual collection of fees from issuances and renewals of passport and travel documents for the improvement of passporting and consular services. Finally, the new law imposes penalties on offenses relating to the forgery of visas and entry documents and the illegal withholding of passports, penalizing DFA officers for unfair and discriminatory practices. I now therefore ask for the support of my colleagues in modernizing our passport law. Having been in exile, deprived of a passport for 7 unbearable years, my travails finally resulting in the landmark case of Marcos versus Manglapos, where Justice Padilla intoned that an individual must be protected against unexpected, irresponsible, or excessive encroachment on his right to travel by the state. With this new law, perhaps no future citizen will ever have to endure deprivation, injustice, or indeed inconvenience in their right to a Filipino passport. With this new bill as the basis of the new Philippine Passport Act, I am confident we can further curb discriminatory practices, usher in a new generation of passports, and be at par with the international standards of passporting. Thank you, Mr. President and honored colleagues.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Amy Marcos. Before we proceed with the co-sponsorship speeches, Mr. President, may I just be allowed to welcome and acknowledge our guests from the gallery. The DFA Assistant Secretary is here with us, ASEC Henry Bensurto. Thank you, sir.
Welcome to the Senate.
Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measures, the distinguished gentleman from the great province of Cavite, Senator Ramon Bong Revilla Jr. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Bong Revilla is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to co-sponsor Senate Bill number 2001, seeking to legislate the new Philippine Passport Act. Alam po natin ang kahalagaan ng passport sa ating mga kababayan. It is our gateway to see the world. With our passport in, we are able to fly across continents to travel, whether for leisure or work. Our passport signifies our inviolable constitutional right to travel. At ngayon nga na muli nang nagbubukas ang iba't ibang mga bansa, ang pagnanais ng ating mga kababayan na maglakbay ay tuluyan na ring nanunumbalik. And this is why we endeavor to make our passport law ever more dynamic to respond to the changing times, especially with the advent of technology. Through this proposed measure, we recognize that we are now living in this digital era, which all the more ensures the accessibility and convenience in the application processes. Mahalaga po ito lalo na para sa ating mga kababayang OFWs na itinuturing na susi ang kanilang passport tungo sa mas maalwang pamumuhay. We also support the proposals instituting safeguards against unauthorized access and disclosure of personal information, as well as the prohibition against unfair and discriminatory practices. We have to make traveling less burdensome for our people. Ang pagkuha at paggamit ng passport ay hindi na dapat dumagdag pa sa hirap na pinapasan ng ating mga kababayan. Convenience in securing a passport should not amount to curtailing our people's very right to travel. Kaya kaisa po ako ng ating komite at thank you sa ating chairperson, Senator Amy Marcos, sa kanyang para mapabilis ang panukalang ito. At sa lahat ng mamamayang Pilipino sa pagsulong ng mga panukalang umaadhika sa kanilang karapatang makapaglakbay. Maraming salamat, Ginoong Pangulo.
Thank you, Senator Bong Revilla. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, this representation together with Senator Jinggoy Estrada would just like to insert for the record our co-sponsorship speech. I just wanted to manifest that, Mr. President.
Yes, manifestation is noted.
Yes, Mr. President, next to co-sponsor the measure is the distinguished gentleman from Davao and Batangas province, no other than Senator Bongo. I move that he be recognized, Mr. President.
Senator Bongo is recognized.
Mr. President, it is my privilege to co-sponsor the bill providing for a new passport law to further improve passport application process and its accessibility to the general public and to enhance the security and integrity of the Philippine passport. I congratulate the chairperson, Senator Amy Marcos, for successfully prioritizing this measure. With the advancements in technology, it is just right and proper that we have a more simplified, accessible, and secure Philippine passport. After all, the right to travel is recognized in our Constitution. Mr. President, the proposed Philippine Passport Act provides a new and revised guidelines and requirements for the issuance of Philippine passports. It also provides the requirements for minor applicants, foundling, senior citizens, and migrant workers. The bill also provides that the DFA is mandated to establish and maintain an online application portal and electronic one-stop shop, which must be readily accessible on its official website to facilitate convenience of application and ease in gathering and submission of the requirements. The bill also reiterates the 10-year validity of regular passports except for those under 18 years of age. Nung panahon po ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte, pinirmahan niya po ang Republic Act 10928 to amend the existing passport law to extend the validity of passports from 5 years to 10 years. Napakalaking bagay po noon, lalong-lalo na sa ating mga kababayan na napakahirap pong mag-renew ng passport. Para hindi na mahirapan ng ating mga kababayan na pumila at magbayad pa para sa panibagong passport, ayaw nating pahirapan ng ating mga kababayan sa pagkuha ng basic government services. I laud that the 10-year validity of passports is carried in this proposed measure. Another feature of the bill includes reduction of 20% of the passport application fees for senior citizens and persons with disability. The bill also recognizes the special assistance needed by senior citizens, PWDs, pregnant women, and OFWs by mandating accommodations to expedite the application and renewal of passports for these sectors through the creation of special lanes. Through this measure, Mr. President, we hope we could enhance and protect the unimpaired exercise of our right to travel. It is for these reasons that I request to be considered a co-author of this measure. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Bongo. Majority Leader.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you, Senator Bongo. And just like with the manifestation of Senator Bongo, with the permission of the author and the chair, we would also like to be one of the co-authors of this particular measure, if I may, Mr. President.
Yes, certainly. Thank you very much for your support and your endorsement, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues to study further the measure, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2001 under Committee Report number 43. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Bill number 2001 under Committee Report number 43 is suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1806 under Committee Report number 20. Mr. President, this is the bill on the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights and Obligations Act. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, resumption of consideration of Senate Bill number 1806 under Committee Report number 20 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we close the period of interpellations and debate, and now I move to open the period of amendments. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with no committee amendments, considering that this measure is a substitute bill, I move that we open the period of individual amendments.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that we recognize Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, the principal sponsor of the measure, for his individual amendments.
Our sponsor, Senator Win Gatchalian, is recognized.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. These are my amendments, Mr. President, on page 2, line 15, under section 3, on definition of terms, replace the word taxes between the words all and imposed with the word exactions. The new provision shall now read as follows. E. Taxes refer to all exactions imposed under the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, the Customs Modernization and Tariff Act of 2016, the Local Government Code of 1991 as amended, and all other tax laws, rules, and regulations, including those collected by other tax collecting agencies. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 4, line 9, after the words pursuit of, delete the words the case and replace it with the words any assessment or matter involving it, period. The paragraph shall now read as follows. Letter D, right to represent evidence and witnesses. The taxpayer shall have the right to be given ample and adequate opportunity to present evidence in the possession of the taxpayer or any third party, and call on witnesses to testify as the case may be, that would assist the taxpayer in pursuit of any assessment or matter involving it. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 4, line 22, after the words tax audits, add the phrase, and to address the request and other matters pending before the BIR. It shall now read, letter F, right to timely and expeditious completion of tax audits. The taxpayer shall have the right to have revenue authorities begin and complete tax audits and to address the request and other matters pending before the BIR in a timely and expeditious manner. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On the same page 4, paragraph G, line 27, after the words benefit of, delete the article and in lieu thereof, add the words a proper. Also after the words audit conducted and the phrase by authorized revenue examiners. The new paragraph shall read as follows. Letter G, right against baseless assessments, except in cases allowed by law. The tax authorities are prohibited from issuing assessments against taxpayers without the benefit of a proper audit conducted by authorized revenue examiners against taxpayers. Otherwise, such assessments shall be void. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 4, paragraph H, line 31, delete the words rules and regulations. The new paragraph H shall now read as follows. H, right to be given an opportunity for amicable settlement. Unless contrary to laws, the taxpayer shall have the opportunity to amicably settle the taxpayer's deficiencies at any stage of the proceedings, provided that said settlement must be in writing and duly signed by the parties or their agent. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, paragraph J, line 7, after the word interest, add the word surcharges on the subtitle. Likewise, on line 8, after the word interest, and a comma, and add the word surcharges. On the same paragraph, line 9, insert the word unjust or excessive assessment and add a comma before the words unjustifiable error. Paragraph J now reads as follows. J, right to relief from paying interest, surcharges, and penalties.
Paying interest, tama. Surcharges. Tama. Tama. Tama, di ba?
Sorry, Mr. President, let me just repeat. The paragraph J now reads as follows. Right to relief from paying interest, comma, surcharges, and penalties. The taxpayer shall be entitled to a reduction of interest, comma, surcharges, and penalties levied on their tax liabilities in case of any unjust or excessive assessment, comma, unjustifiable error, comma, or delay caused by the revenue authorities, including instances of loss of records, personnel transfers, extended illness, or leaves of absence, and personnel training, resignation, retirement, or termination from service of the concerned personnel. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 5, section 6, on taxpayers' basic obligation, line 31, after the letter and paragraph A, add a subtitle to read obligation to comply with tax laws. Also on the same line, change the lowercase, the word observe, and insert the phrase the taxpayer shall before the word observe. The new paragraph A shall now read as follows. A. Obligation to comply with tax laws. Dash. The taxpayer shall observe and comply with tax laws, rules, and regulations. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 8, number 8, on page 10, line 1, paragraph B, add a subtitle, obligation on truthful and timely disclosure of information. Also change the lower case, the word truthfully, and before the word truthfully, add the phrase, the taxpayer shall. The new paragraph B shall now read as follows. B. Obligation on truthful and timely disclosure of information. Dash. The taxpayer shall truthfully and timely disclose complete and correct information as required by tax laws, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to registered address, official email address, registered activities, tax type details, and accounting period. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same page 10, paragraph C, line 5, add the subtitle Obligation to lodge and submit required documents completely and on time. Also change the lower case the word lodge and before the word lodge. Add the phrase the taxpayer shall. The new paragraph C shall read as follows. C. Obligation to lodge and submit required documents completely and on time. Dash. The taxpayer shall lodge and submit either personally or through electronic means in a timely manner all relevant information, books of accounts, reports, records, returns, and other documents to revenue authorities on or before dates set by tax laws, rules, and regulations. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same page, paragraph D, line 10, add the subtitle, Obligation to observe reasonable and diligent care in tax compliance. Also change the lower case, the word exercise, and before the word exercise, add the phrase the taxpayer shall. The new paragraph D shall read as follows. D. Obligation to observe reasonable and diligent care in tax compliance. Dash. The taxpayer shall exercise reasonable care and diligence in complying with all tax obligations. So move, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On the same page, paragraph E, line 12, add a subtitle, Obligation to keep and make tax records available for examination. Also change to lowercase the word keep and before the word record, add the phrase the taxpayer shall. The new paragraph E shall read as follows. E. Obligation to keep and make tax records available for examination. Dash. The taxpayer shall keep accurate records of required books of accounts and other tax information for the duration required by law, rules, and regulations, and make them available for examination by revenue officers following proper procedures. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there any objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
On page 6, paragraph F, line 16, add a subtitle, Obligation to Cooperate with Revenue Authorities in Tax Audit. Also change to lowercase the word cooperate, and before the word cooperate, add the phrase, the taxpayer shall. The new paragraph F now reads as follows. F, obligation to cooperate with revenue authorities in tax audit. The taxpayer shall, let me repeat it, Mr. President. F, obligation to cooperate with revenue authorities in tax audit, dash. The taxpayer shall cooperate with revenue authorities in the latter's conduct of tax audits in accordance with laws, rules, and regulations. End. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Lastly, Mr. President, on page 6, paragraph G, lastly to the 10 more, no, I'm just kidding, Mr. President. On page 6, paragraph G, line 16, add a subtitle, Obligation to Timely Pay Taxes. Also change to lowercase the word timely. And before the word timely, add the phrase, the taxpayer shall. The new paragraph F shall now read as follows. G, obligation to timely pay taxes. The taxpayer shall timely pay the taxes due to the government through any available payment channels. So moved, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. A lot of our colleagues are interested in getting a clean copy, Mr. President, before we proceed with this measure. And so I move that we suspend consideration of of Senate Bill number 1806. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Bill number 1806 is hereby suspended.
Move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended. Please resume.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this is to just manifest that the secretary be allowed to make the necessary corrections on the page and line numbers. Just the page and line numbers, Mr. President, to reflect the approved amendments introduced a while ago by our distinguished colleague, the chairperson of the Committee on Ways and Means, Senator Win Gatchalian. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the approval of the body, Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 1846 under Committee Report number 22. This is the Bill on Internet Transaction Act of 2022.
Is there an objection? There being none, resumption of consideration of Senate Bill number 1846 under Committee Report number 22 is now in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, this juncture, we'd like to put on record that the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the measure, and now I move, Mr. President, to open the period of interpellations and debate and recognize the sponsor, Senator Mark Villar, and to interpellate Senator Win Gatchalian. I so move, Mr. President.
The sponsor, Senator Mark Villar, and to interpellate Senator Win Gatchalian are both recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, from the onset, I would like to thank the good sponsor for sponsoring this bill. I'm also an author of this bill, and this bill has been discussed in the previous Congress, and it's really about time that we put this in motion, Mr. President, considering that internet transactions in our country has ballooned, especially after the pandemic, and we need to address issues on protecting our consumers, protecting online retailers, and people who participate in internet transactions. So from the onset, I'd like to thank the good sponsor for sponsoring this measure. I have some clarificatory questions, Mr. President, just to enrich the records. And may I ask the good sponsor if he's open to receive some questions, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, we are open to questions from Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'll focus my questions on the liability, Mr. President. And I saw that there's an improved and much more detailed enumeration of the liabilities compared to the original version, Mr. President. And Mr. President, just to educate our consumers, especially who buy their products online, and also to enrich the record, Mr. President, I would like to ask the good sponsor on page 25, section 26, letter A, the concept of subsidiarily liable, Mr. President. I would like to ask the sponsor on that concept. What does it mean, and how will our consumers be protected with that concept, Mr. President?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. When we talk about subsidiarily liable, it's in as opposed to solidary liability, which means that the platform or the seller is directly liable for any infractions, whereas subsidiarily, he's only liable if the seller can no longer address the concerns of the consumer, and if it's shown that he is remiss in doing, or he has lapses in doing his due diligence as stated in the bill, which is if the digital platform fails to exercise ordinary diligence, resulting in loss or damage to the consumer, or if the identity of the online merchant, e-retailer, and the digital platform marketplace are the same. So basically, if he doesn't do his responsibility in terms of showing the information of the seller, or if he does not do due diligence in terms of the service of the seller, then he is subsidiarily liable as opposed to solidarily liable.
So, Mr. President, in this particular case, the primary liability lies with the online merchant and retailer, e-retailer, Mr. President.
solid then.
I'm sorry, can you?
The
repeat?
the primary liability lies with the online merchant and retailer, Mr. President.
Yes, it does. Yes, that is
And
correct.
in that case, the consumer or the online consumer will have to go after the merchant first before the e-marketplace provider will answer for the liability.
Yes,
Mr. President.
because it's subsidiarily, by definition, first he would have to go to the seller, and should the seller not be able to service the request of the buyer, then the e-marketplace or the platform will take some liability, assuming that they did not perform their due diligence on the seller.
Mr. President, for example, I'm a big fan of Shopee, Mr. President. I'm already a platinum member, Mr. President, because of my avid purchase on Shopee. So, Mr. Shopee, Mr. President, Mr. President.
Next campaign, pwede yan.
Mr. President, in Shopee there are I noticed that there are e-retailers, no? Both domestic and let's say abroad, no? China, Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia. So as a consumer, for example, if I'm not happy with the product or the product is not what I paid for based on the description, I have to go after the e-retailer first, Mr. President.
Yes. To begin with, if it's a foreign, under this law, they're required to register now. It's put in the law that even if you're a foreign entity, you still have to register locally. It's important. That's an important aspect of this law because we need to know, the DTI needs to know who the consumer can run after. So that information has to be readily available under the law. So they can go after that. But in subsidiary liability, should the seller not be able to, compensate fully the consumer, then the liability of the platform would come in, assuming that there were lapses in the acts of the platform.
Mr. President, I would like to focus on the e-retailer because that in our proposal that is the e-retailer holds the primary liability, Mr. President. So in that particular case, what remedies first are available to the consumers insofar as the e-retailer is concerned? Because they hold the primary liability. So based on the law, I should go after the e-retailer. But what are the remedies available for the consumer?
Well, of course there's the refund, but what's good about the law is that it gives the DTI the power, takedown power. Should the site or should the seller not be able to accommodate, there's a power now that with the DTI under the new e-commerce bureau that would allow them to either, they could shut down the site or they could also give penalties. They can also give penalties to the seller who is unable to perform his commitment to the buyer. So so there is of course the penalties, and there's also the option of taking down the site if it becomes if there's no other recourse.
So, Mr. President, the DTI can shut down a particular e-retailer within a platform. That's what is being envisioned in the bill, Mr. President. Because, for example, Shopee, there's a lot of
Yes.
e-retailers. So, the enforcement of this letter A goes after
Yes.
the e-retailer first.
Yes, they can compel Shopee. Yeah. So all the platforms under the law are required to have their own redress mechanism for the for the buyers. So that should already be part of their system. So should there be any cases of consumer, I guess, if there are any cases of consumer fraud, then they would have to the platform would have to step in. They would be compelled to step in, and of course the DTI, the e-commerce bureau, would also have powers to enforce in case that the seller or the platform are unable to address the consumer issues.
All right. So, Mr. President, so the DTA can go much more granular in terms of shutting down websites or even e-retailers. That's what is envisioned here?
Yes, they can be more granular. Of course, that is just one option for them.
Yes, of course.
It's not. Of course,
in
it's not.
extreme case.
Yeah,
In an
yeah.
extreme case, Mr. President.
And it's about it's 30 days. They can shut them down for 30 days, but the site is given 48 hours to respond. So there are a lot of mechanisms that are in the law that would allow the e-commerce bureau to address any consumer complaints.
Okay. So, Mr. President, assuming nothing happens with the e-retailer, this is where the subsidiarily liable will kick in and the platform becomes liable. Is that correct, Mr. President?
Yes, if they're unable, if the seller is unable to give compensation, give the proper compensation to the seller, then the responsibility of the subsidiary responsibility of the site the platform would kick in.
Okay. And Mr. President, in the same manner, if the marketplace or the platform, e-marketplace platform, cannot address the complaint of a consumer, that platform can also be shut down.
Yes.
And then this is an extreme case.
Yes,
Mr.
yes,
President,
yes. In extreme case,
Yeah.
yes, but the power is there to shut down a platform that shows, I guess, inability to address consumer complaints.
And is there any that shutdown mechanism? What is the process for that, Mr. President?
Well, the shutdown mechanism, if there's can be implemented, should there be any, if the e-commerce bureau deems that there's some immediate liability or immediate danger, harm to the public, so they can use this mechanism. And at the same time, it has a duration of 30 days. And then anything after that, any extension would have to go through through the judiciary or judicial methods.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'll go to when the marketplace and the online merchant becomes solidarily liable. I think that's is that what is being contemplated in letter B, Mr. President?
Yes, that is what's
So
being
these are they're in letter B. They're now jointly liable in 4 instances, Mr. President.
Yes, well, he's liable in the event that the initial seller is unable to compensate the buyer. Then that kicks in. But it's important to note that it should be shown that there was lapses in terms of the due diligence that the platform did.
Yes, Mr. President. So here in letter B, they become jointly liable or solidarily liable if the marketplace fails to exercise ordinary diligence.
Yes.
And if the online merchant and e-retailer are the same, and there are 4 instances here, Mr. President. So in that particular case, it's not subsidiarily anymore, but they become jointly liable. Mr. President, that's the essence of this.
I think the
Provision
word
is
is still subsidiarily.
It's still the same, Mr.
yeah,
President.
Yeah, it doesn't. The language isn't jointly liable. It's more
Oh, yeah.
subsidiarily because
Okay.
it only takes effect if the seller is unable to, and then he has to if the seller is unable to compensate, then the platform has to step in then the platform has to step in to complete the compensation, should it be shown that they were unable to exercise due diligence.
Yep. Mr. President, if it's subsidiarily liable, in letter B, they're one and the same, Mr. President. So,
Yes, that is correct. They are actually, do you mean the,
in letter number 2, Mr. President.
yes, yes.
Yeah, so,
Yes, then it's
How
Solidarity.
can that-
if it's only one, if they're only one, if they're the e-retailer and the merchant are the same.
yeah, but Mr. President, in that particular case, they're one and the same, then it cannot be subsidiarily liable because they're
Yeah,
same
it-
personalities already, Mr. President. So,
Yes.
so, can that be categorized that they should be jointly liable?
Yes, actually, we see that point, Mr. President, and we do have some proposed amendments
Okay.
that can cure that point, to make it clear. And we are open to these amendments.
And also, Mr. President, thank you for that, Mr. President, just to make that clear under the law. When are they jointly liable, no? Especially in instances that they are the same personalities. No? So I think it's logical that they should be jointly liable. Mr. President, on the topic of I heard earlier from the good sponsor that even the e-retailer will be registered. I think that's in number 4 of the in page 26, line 6, number 4. They'll be subsidiarily liable if the e-retailers are not authorized to do business in the Philippines. So, in other words, Mr. President, it's not only the marketplace platform that should be registered in the Philippines, but also the individual e-retailer should be registered in the Philippines.
That is correct, Mr. President. They have to be registered. There will be a online business registry that will be created for that purpose.
Okay. Mr. President, who will be in charge of the registry?
The
E-commerce or the DTI?
the DTI will be in charge of that.
And if the individual e-retailers will not be registered, how will DTI enforce the penalty, Mr. President, the liability? Because I'm just thinking ahead that, again, no, going back to my Shopee, because I'm a platinum member, there's so many e-retailers there, no? And thousands probably, you know, and they're all located in different countries. And while I appreciate and support the concept of registering them here, I don't know if that's practical and also possible to register all individual e-retailers inside a platform, Mr. President.
Yeah, but I guess
I support that, Mr.
Yes.
President, but I'm just thinking ahead and thinking and trying to envision if that's possible and how DTI can enforce, number 1, enforce the registration, and then number 2, penalize the individual e-retailer. Because in our concept, it's subsidiarily liability. So meaning DTI should first penalize the individual e-retailers before it can go to the e-marketplace platform, Mr. President.
Yeah, that is correct. With regards to the online business registration, it's not as prohibitive as we might think. Basically, they just have to give some basic information, a contact number, where their office is located. And I think that's something that is not too difficult to implement. And I think Shopee should implement that because, yeah, who are they going to call if there's obviously if they don't have any kind of information with the seller? It'll be very difficult to have some sort of enforcement capability in terms of our and to give consumer protection. So I think that's even if it may take even if they have a lot of online sellers, I think we should really endeavor to have this online registry. Just basic. It's not the same requirements as, maybe incorporating a company, but it's certainly just to give basic information on a seller is something that I think we should do and can be done.
Thank you, good sponsor. Will the e-marketplace platform be mandated to register their e-retailers? What's the role of the e-marketplace? Because they're the ones dealing with these e-retailers.
Yes.
And I'm just envisioning, no, DTI is outside, um, and it's going to be very difficult for DTI to compel or to even communicate, no, with the e-retailers. But but with the platform, I think it will be much
Yes.
easier, no, much more practical. So, question is, what responsibility does the e-marketplace platform, insofar as registry is concerned or registering their e-retailers is concerned?
Well, the DTI will compel the platform to submit a list of merchants, and should there be any questions or should there be any infractions committed by the retailer, then the DTI will ask the platform to remove the e-retailer from their merchant list or from their space.
Will DTI come up with rules and regulation or orders to mandate the e-marketplace platform to register all of their e-retailers? And I'm just trying to envision, like, for example, uh, Amazon. No? Amazon is, I don't know if Amazon has an office here in the Philippines, but definitely they have e-retailers also doing business here. How will DTI mandate the registry of the e-retailers of, let's say, Amazon, who's not as present here, but nevertheless has presence to some consumers?
Yeah. One, I think that we go back to the subsidiary liability. Should there be a complaint, the DTA has the power to compel under threat of penalties and taking down of the site. At the same time, they will also, should there be any, they will also mandate the e-marketplaces to maintain this list, which they will regulate, which the e-commerce bureau will be mandated to regularly check. And in the bill, there's also details on the manpower that will be given to the e-commerce bureau, so they will have some capability in terms of monitoring these e-merchants, and of course, there's also some leeway in terms of the IRR that they will draft upon passing with this bill.
Okay. But Mr. President, can we interpret number 4 that if the e-retailers, the individual e-retailers, are not registered in the Philippines, then the e-marketplace will be liable, no, to the government?
Yes, because they're required to register them. If
Okay.
they do not, then they're liable for that.
Okay.
It goes back to what the exercising the due diligence. So obviously, if they didn't require them to put the information, then they're not exercising the proper due diligence with their merchants.
Okay. Lastly, Mr. President, from the DTI, the E-commerce Bureau, Mr. President, what mechanisms will it promulgate to help our consumers seek redress in cases, for example, of fraud, of misinformation? What programs under the law and what powers and functions under the law the E-commerce Bureau will promulgate in order to protect our consumers, Mr. President?
Well, there's of course the administrative penalties. These are in the bill. The monetary compensation that was given, which is significantly higher than the value of the goods that the aforementioned goods. And of course, I think the major power that they didn't have before is the takedown power. That's very significant. That of course in I suppose more extreme cases they might exercise that should the platform not consistently not address the needs of the consumers. And there are also other mechanisms or other other aspects to the bill, including the trust mark, which I think that, if they might, those retailers who prove themselves to be very, very, I guess, responsive to the consumers and who fill the requirements properly, they can be given a trust mark by the DTI.
Mr. President, will the DTI or the e-commerce bureau mandate the platforms to come up with their own mechanisms to address consumer complaints?
Yes.
Of course, what I was asking earlier is really
Yes.
at the extreme case, no?
Yeah.
And we don't want that to happen because it's costly for our small consumers. Most of the people who buy from these platforms are micro consumers, and I think it's very costly for them to go to the extreme case of litigation, Mr. President.
Yes,
So,
of course.
will the law empower the DTI through e-commerce bureau to mandate platforms to come up with effective dispute resolutions, effective mechanisms to address consumer complaints, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President, it is in the law that the DTI will require the creation of an online dispute resolution mechanism. So that will be present once the law is passed, and it will be a point of entry for consumers, businesses, including registered online merchants, e-retailers, and digital platforms in seeking out-of-court resolution of disputes. So the legislation will compel all agencies of government to support this program. So they will also help in making sure that these concerns and complaints are received, docketed, and transmitted. And we will make sure that, and they will make sure that they are addressed properly at the proper time.
Mr. President, for example, the e-marketplace platform does not have an internal dispute resolution or some form of mechanism to address consumer complaint. Is it within the powers of the e-commerce bureau to penalize and to make the e-market platform liable?
Yes, there are prescribed penalties present in the bill that they can enforce should the should the platform be liable for consumer infractions.
So in that particular case, for example, I'm a platform and I was mandated to come up with mechanisms to address complaints, disputes, but I don't follow that mandate, or I don't follow the instructions of government to come up with mechanisms. I can be penalized, Mr. President?
Yes, yes, they will also be liable to the consumer.
And at the extreme case, they can be taken down, Mr.
Yes,
President. All right.
that is correct, at the
All right.
extreme case.
All right, Mr. President. Once again, I thank the good sponsor for pushing this bill. This bill is also one of the bills that we've been working on since the last Congress. And I know that this bill has undergone a lot of discussion. And in fact, I joined the hearing last time when Senator Pimentel was the chairman of the Trade Committee. So I'm very happy to see that finally the bill has reached the floor. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the good sponsor.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Gatchalian. Session suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 1846. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, consideration of Senate Bill number 1846 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, some administrative matters, just to manifest and with the consent of the body, the co-sponsorship speech of Senator Francis Tolentino on proposed Senate Resolution number 535 on the Philippine contingent to Turkey and Syria be inserted into the records.
Is there an objection? There being none, manifestation is noted.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the body and the conformity of Senator Lauren Legarda, I move that Senator Christopher Lawrence Go be made co-author of Senate Bill number 1841, strengthening the conservation and protection of Philippine cultural heritage. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6660 under Committee Report number 44. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There be none. Consideration of House Bill number 6660 is in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we have sponsored the measure, and now I move that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, no member wish to interpolate on the measure. I move.
Hindi. Nagbigay si Coke ng ano.
Yung sa akin na they can choose. The power of choice, that's fine. As long as they're in the margin of line. You follow the IR. And then the last one is the...
Mr. President, there being no member who wish to interpolate on the measure, I move to close the period of interpellations and debate. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendment. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
No amendments, Mr. Chair. Mr. President.
Mr. President, there being no amendments, I move to close the period of amendments. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of amendments hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6660 under Committee Report number 44. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6660 under Committee Report number 44 is hereby approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6660. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6661 under Committee Report number 45. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, resumption of House Bill number 6661 under Committee Report number 45 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we have sponsored the bill, and now I move that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, no member wish to interpolate on the measure. I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpretation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
No amendments, Mr. Chair. Mr. President.
Mr. President, with that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of amendments hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6661 under Committee Report number 45, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6661 under Committee Report number 45 is now approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6661.
Is there an objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6668 under Committee Report number 46.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6668 under Committee Report number 46 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we have sponsored the bill, and I have now moved that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is now open.
Mr. President, no member wish to interpolate or ask any question on the particular measure. I move that we close the period of interpellations and debate. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There being
No,
none.
no amendments, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Is there objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby closed.
With the consent of the body, Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6668 under Committee Report number 46, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There being none, House Bill number 6668 under Committee Report number 46 is now approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6668. So move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There
Nine, under Committee Report number 47.
Is there objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill number 6699 under Committee Report number 47 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we have sponsored the bill, and I now move that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there objection? There being none, period of interpellation is now open.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpellate or ask any questions. I move to close the period of interpellations. So move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendments.
Is there objection? There being none, period of amendment is now open.
No amendments, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I move that we close the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the body, I now move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6699 under Committee Report number 47. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6699 under Committee Report number 47 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6699.
Is there an objection? There being none, consideration of the measure is now suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6700 under Committee Report number 48. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6700 under Committee Report number 48 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measures that we are now in the period of interpellation. And so I move that we open the period of interpellations and debate as we have sponsored the measure.
Is there objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate on the measure, so I move now to close the period of interpellations and debate. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There be none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendments.
Is there objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby opened.
No amendments, Mr.
With that, Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve in second reading House Bill number 6700 under Committee Report number 48, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6700 under Committee Report number 48 is now approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6700.
Is there an objection? There be none. Consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6663 under Committee Report number 49.
Is there an objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill number 6663 under Committee Report number 49 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the bill is that we have sponsored the measure, and I now move that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is now open.
No member wishes to interpolate or ask any questions. I now move to close the period of interpellations. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
With consent of the body, Mr. President, I now move to open the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendments, Mr.
With that,
President.
Mr. President, I move to close the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I now move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6663 under Committee Report number 49, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6663 under Committee Report number 49 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6663.
If there are no objections, consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6664 under Committee Report number 50. I so move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6664 under Committee Reports consideration number 50 consideration is now in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the bill, and I now move that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there any objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby open.
No member wish to interpolate or ask any questions, Mr. President. I now move to close the period of interpellation. So move, Mr. President.
If there are no objection, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
With the consent of the body, Mr. President, I now move to open the period of amendments.
Is there any objection? There being a period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendments, Mr. President.
With that, Mr. President, I move that we close the period of amendments.
If there are no objection, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6664 under Committee Report number 50, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
If there's no objection, approval of House Bill number 6664 under Committee Report number 50 on second reading is hereby in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6664.
If there's no objection, consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6665 under Committee Report number 51.
If there's no objection, consideration House Bill number 6665 under Committee Report number 51 is now in order.
Thank you, Mr. President. The parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the bill and are now moved that we open the period of interpellations and debate. So move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is now open.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate or ask any questions. I now move that we close the period of interpellation. So move, Mr. President.
If there's no objection, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
President, with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendments.
If there's no objection, period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendments, Mr. President.
With that, I move that we close the period of amendments.
If there's no objection, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the body, I now move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6665 under Committee Report number 51, subject to style. I so move, Mr. President.
If there's no objection, House Bill number 6665 under Committee Report number 51 is now approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6665.
If there's no objection, the consideration of the measure is now suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6695 under Committee Report number 52. I so move, Mr. President.
If there's no objection, consideration of House Bill number 6695 under Committee Report number 52 is now in order.
The parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the bill and I now move that we open the period of interpellations and debate.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is now open.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate or ask any questions. I now move that we close the period of interpellations and debate. So move, Mr. President.
If there's no objection, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I now move to open the period of amendments.
If there's no objection, period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendments, Mr. President.
Move that we close the period of amendments.
If there's no objection, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Consent of the body, Mr. President, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6695 under Committee Report number 52, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there objection? There being none, House Bill number 6695 under Committee Report number 52 is hereby approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6695.
If there's no objection, consideration of the measure is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6696 under Committee Report number 53. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill number 6696 under Committee Report number 53 is now in order.
The parliamentary status, Mr. President, is that we have sponsored the measure and I now move that we open the period of interpellations.
Is there an objection? There being a period of interpellation is hereby open.
No member wishes to interpret or ask any questions, Mr. President. I now move that we close the period of interpellation. So move, Mr. President.
There are no objection, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I now move to open the period of amendments.
There's no
No.
objection, period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendment, Mr. President.
Therefore, move that we close the period of amendments.
There's no objection, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6696 under Committee Report number 53, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
If there are no objections, House Bill number 6696 under Committee Report number 53 is now approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that suspend consideration of House Bill number 6696.
If there are no objections, consideration of the measure is now suspended.
Mr. President, at this juncture, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6669 under Committee Report number 54.
Is there objection? There being none, Consideration of House Bill number 6669 under Committee Report number 54 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the bill and I now move that we open the period of interpellation. So move, Mr. President.
If there are no objection, period of interpellation is now in order.
Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate or ask any questions on this particular measure. I now move that we close the period of interpellations and debate. I so move, Mr.
If
President.
there are no objection, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Mr. President, I now move to open the period of amendments.
If there are no objection, period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendments, Mr. President.
With that, I move that we close the period of amendments.
If there are no objection, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6669 under Committee Report number 54. Subject to style, Mr. President. So moved.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6669 under Committee Report number 54 is now approved on second reading.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of House Bill number 6669.
If there is no objection, consideration of the said measure is now suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 6697 under Committee Report number 55.
Is there any objection? There being none, consideration of House Bill number 6697 under Committee Report number 55 is now in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status of the measure is that we have sponsored the bill and I now move that we open the period of interpellations.
Is there an objection? There being none, period of interpellation is hereby open.
No member wishes to interpolate or ask any questions on the measure, Mr. President. I move to close the period of interpellation. So move.
Is there an objection? Hearing none, period of interpellation is hereby closed.
Move to open the period of amendments.
Is there an objection? There be none, period of amendment is hereby open.
No amendments, Mr. President.
With that, I move to close the period of amendments.
Is there objection? There being none, period of amendment is hereby closed.
Mr. President, with the consent of the body, I move that we approve on second reading House Bill number 6697 under Committee Report number 55, subject to style. So move, Mr. President.
Is there an objection? There being none, House Bill number 6697 under Committee Report number 55 is hereby approved on second reading.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, before I move for suspension, Mr. President, may I be allowed to be a co-author of these measures, Mr. President? House Bill number 666, 660, 6661, 6668, 6699, 6700, 6663, 6664, 6665, 6695, 6696, 6669, and 6697. As co-sponsor, Mr. President.
Yes,
This representation and perhaps the presiding officer, Mr.
yes,
President.
motion is approved.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I move for a minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session is suspended.
President, with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed with the privileged speech and recognize our distinguished colleague, the distinguished lady from City of Taguig and Pateros, Senator Pia Cayetano, to deliver her speech. So move, Mr. President.
Senator Pia Cayetano is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just arrived from the Interparliamentary Union Assembly in Manama, Bahrain today, and I would like to report to our colleagues and to the Filipino people what we did there. Mr. President, I was sent by the Senate President to attend the IPU, the 146th Interparliamentary Union Assembly in Manama, Bahrain. Take note, dear colleagues, this is the 146th. I first attended mine, the 112th. So, marami na. But hindi naman yan one per year. 2 per year naman yun. But my first was in 2005, Your Honors. So fast forward to today, we attended the ASEAN +3 meetings, and then the Asia Pacific Group meetings, and I took the floor to promote our hosting of the Asian Asia Pacific Parliamentary
Asia
Forum.
Pacific.
There you go. Tama? Pacific Parliamentary Forum in November. So I took the opportunity to promote our hosting in these 2 meetings, and also in the APG meeting, my candidacy for a member of the Standing Committee on United Nations Affairs was approved. So I will now be a representative of the Asia Pacific Group for this committee. And it so happened that there was a vacancy for the Sustainable Development Group. So ora-orada, we submitted a handwritten nomination to Congresswoman Rachel Arenas. And she is now a representative. So I think it is timely that 2 women from the Senate, one from the Senate and one from the House, will be representing not just the Philippines, but the Asia Pacific region in these 2 committees, Your Honors. Next, Your Honor, is on that same day, I had the opportunity to attend the Women Parliamentary Meeting, which is always held a day before the official opening. So you'll see photos there of me more than 10 years ago and me today. And in many ways, the issues are the same, which is good and bad. Good because we are not letting go until discriminatory practices, until obstacles are removed. It can be frustrating, Your Honors, to the extent that after all this time, there are still countries that have a lot of issues, and we have our own. There's no country that's perfect. We are one of those who are still continually trying to address discriminatory practices. But it's important that we continue to keep aware on all of this. The specific topic was parliamentary leadership in addressing insecurities and crisis, putting gender equality at the center of water security, climate resilience, and peace sustainability. As Your Honors know, we are one of the few parliaments in the whole world that has a Committee on Sustainable Development Goals, Innovation, Futures Thinking. So we took the opportunity to discuss this, but it serves also as a reminder to this representation, which I share with the body, that we should always look at our bills from a gender lens as well, because when we can truly ensure that women are represented well, that women's concerns are addressed, then we know that it is a sign that there is true democracy and there is true partnership between men and women. Moving on, Your Honors. There was also a WHO side event on leveraging the role of parliamentarians towards universal health coverage. And I was a speaker. I was part of the expert panel sharing our experiences on health financing, particularly on the sin tax laws that we have passed over the few years. So I delivered my intervention there. And then, of course, as head of your delegation, I attended the Governing Council session and delivered our statement during the general plenary. I had the support of our members, our colleagues from the House of Representatives, Your Honors. Finally, I attended one more session on the UN Affairs, which I was not yet officially a member of because my membership starts in October. But I was able to attend as an observer and a participant, and I also made my statement there during that session. I also put on record that I had the opportunity to meet with a colleague who is the president of Unite, a network of parliamentarians for global health. I am the chapter chair for the Asia Pacific, and Unite has a observer status in the IPU. The majority floor leader seems to have some questions. I will happily answer his questions later on. I still have the floor, Your Honors. So I think I have covered all. I'd just like to add also that there are approximately 54,000 Filipino nationals in Bahrain. We had the full support of the embassy, of course, the Senate Secretariat, my staff as well. And I took the opportunity to greet all our kababayans who were very happy to see us because hindi naman daw ganun kadalas na bumibisita ng mga bisitang Pilipino. Ang mga nandyan na Pilipino ay mga nagtatrabaho doon. You see them all over, usually in the retail establishments, from the coffee shops, the furniture shop, yung isang picture dyan, furniture shop yun. And even the IPU itself, the people manning the coffee booths were Filipinos, Your Honor. So it's true that you can find Filipinos all over the world. So on that note, Your Honor, I submit this report and I will be sharing more learnings in the course of debates because I always come home with more learnings having met different parliamentarians coming from all over the world. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the Deputy Minority Leader is seeking the floor. I move that
Yes.
she be recognized, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
First of all, thank you very much to Senator Pia Cayetano for the
Yes,
report,
and,
comprehensive report. And we'd like to recognize.
You're not asking questions, Mr. President, with regard
No.
to the picture, the last picture?
I already know the truth.
Yes, and the truth
And I
shall
keep
set us
the
free.
truth will be close to my heart. Yes, our Deputy Minority Floor Leader is recognized.
Salamat kaayo, Mr. President. I would just like to join the congratulations of the Senate President to the gentlewoman from Taguigan Pateros for her report to us of, again, a very fruitful foreign trip representing the Senate of the Philippines. Also, mabuhay for her election as representative of Asia Pacific to the Standing Committee on UN Affairs, if I got that correctly, and also for what I'm sure was her signal role in the election of another Filipino woman leader, Representative Rachel Arenas, to the Committee on Sustainable Development, Mr. President. So muli, maraming salamat at mabuhay. Salamat
Yes.
kayo, Mr. President.
Thank you so much, Senator Risa. I'd just like to point out, dear colleagues, that the membership of the committees there are they want to ensure that there is gender equality. So they will really tell you if the vacancy is for women. So kung there's two vacancies, they will say one vacancy for a man, one vacancy for a woman, or two for a man kasi meron pang babae. So it's really great that they do it this way to ensure that there's always voices of the women.
Thank you, Mr. President. We'd like to join our colleagues in congratulating Senator Pia Cayetano, and it is noteworthy, Mr. President, that her eyes are glowing, Mr. President, despite the long travel today, Mr. President. We wonder why, but it's
She's inspired.
yeah, we are all inspired.
We're all inspired by her
By her inspiration. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, Mr.
I'm happy that I have inspired all of you. The truth, Your Honor, is despite the busy schedule, I take time to exercise. I go to the gym and I played paddle there. So I'm not just not just my eyes, but my skin is glowing. Everything is glowing because I'm fit and healthy.
Amen.
I have
Yes.
I have been receiving a lot of side questions, Mr. President, but
comments.
and side comments, Mr. President. So before we go to this very interesting topics, Mr. President, of the record, I will now move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Monday, March 20, 2023. Thank you, Mr. President.
There being no objection, I would like to thank first, of course, our colleagues that are here today for the passage of several measures, including mostly local measures, and for second reading, and that we will have a lot, and a reminder that we will have a lot of third reading measures to be taken up on the first hour on Monday. Once again, maraming salamat to the Minority Floor Leader, to Deputy Minority Floor Leader, and to our members of the majority, and of course the Majority Leader for the hard work that you've done.
Thank you.
Sir, mabuhay ka. There being no objection, the session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday, March 20, 2023. Have a safe weekend, everyone.